Hi everybody, welcome to London College Communication. Note the necklace please. My name's Natalie Brett. I'm Head of College and Pro-Vice-Chancellor here. We've got a few stragglers coming in. Come on you lot, get in, sit down. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Robert Elms here tonight, who is talking to our fantastic Professor Tom Hunter. Welcome to those of you that are not part of this college, but this is an amazing community of staff and students, and Tom is a fine example of that. He graduated from here, we were just doing the numbers, 20 years ago. He started... I bet you're students, aren't you? Fantastic. And he's been working here for, we think, probably about 14 or 15 years, and has played a major part in the development of photography in this college, and also, you know, fantastic tutor for our students. He got his professorship, how many years ago? Can't remember.
Last year, was it? Was
it last year or 2 years? Can't remember. Yeah. Anyway, fairly recent.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing and deserved accolade for Tom. We're going to be, Robert here is going to be in conversation with Tom. Robert's a well-known writer and broadcaster, as I'm sure many of you know. A very interesting history as well within the culture, particularly in London, I would say, certainly in my memory. I've got a long memory of the stuff that Robert's been writing and speaking about for a very long time. Tom's quite nervous about this tonight, strangely. However, Robert's done this before with him, so I think we're up for a very interesting evening. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers. I should say as well, actually, I forgot to say this bit, we have great relationships here too. This is a good friend for LCC, and in fact, both wife and daughter have attended college here. So back to that fantastic community stuff.
In fact, Tom was my daughter's teacher. So.
Yeah, there you go. So good stuff. So Rob knows us very well as well, so that's really good. There will be a chance for question and answers at the end, which I think you're going to try and sort of bat them about, aren't you? But thank you, and please enjoy. Thank you.
As was mentioned, I've talked to Tom many times before, actually, because I think he's one of the most astute chroniclers of my city. I was going to say my city, but it's our city, and maybe the city that many of us share, which is quite remarkable because, of course, he's a country boy. And he arrived here to cut down trees, I believe, but he clearly came with a camera, and since then, I think, has managed to portray and see our city in a way that many don't, and has managed to see the extraordinary beauty, often I think, in places that others would dismiss. And I think for that, as a city, we owe this man quite a lot, which is the reason I'm here tonight, because I think his work is fantastic, and I think also as an educator, he's a fantastic example. When you first arrived here, Tom, did you have aspirations to be a photographer, or was it just a hobby, or what? My father had a darkroom in our garden, our backyard. So there was that amazing tunnel. You go in this strange doorway, you have to turn right and then turn left and turn right. And that amazing red glow. If any of you are old enough to remember the red glow in that little darkroom. I remember red glows in rooms in Soho, but that was very good.
Slightly different, yeah. So I do remember taking my first picture of my sister. And I do remember going into that magical world through the tunnel into that red light, putting the paper under the enlarger, then into the paper, swishing that tray, and then the face coming out of those waters.
It's like alchemy, isn't it?
It's alchemy. It's witchcraft. You felt like a witch swishing around, making your magic spell, and the image came out. My sister's face came out of these murky waters, and it did stick there. But then I got lost in juvenile delinquency, punk rock, motorbikes, chasing rabbits and girls, living in the forest.
Did you catch either of them?
I caught lots of, coming back from the pub on a Saturday night, we used to catch lots of rabbits, which
Yeah, and a few pheasants, and I did live on those. Suitable sort of survival week, I think, because I did live off the land with mushrooms and rabbits and pheasants. And then, I came to London through sort of a strange quirk, really. But my tool was a chainsaw rather than a camera, so it was, I sort of forgot about all those sort of cultural things and was sort of just living a life, really.
Now, the title tonight is Home, and it seems to me that home has always been almost a theme of your work, running from the very beginning. The idea of chronicling home and finding home and seeking it out in unusual places. The first pictures that you did of the squats in Hackney and all of that, were you consciously doing that?
I was conscious of documenting something. And that happened in my wilder youth as well. I mean, it wasn't particularly wild, but being sort of 13, 14, 15, 16, those sort of ages, you were a bit older, you were sort of much more, you were in London at the time with that punk thing going on. I was out in the provinces where we heard about things, a punk record, and a year later it actually got down to Dorset. It would actually hear a Sex Pistols record 2 years later after it actually got released. But there was an amazing tribalism, as you know, in the 70s and 80s, where my friends were skinheads, they were punks, they were teddy boys, they were bikers, they were mods. And that amazing culture did sort of strike with me until 2 friends died in a motorbike accident. And that really sort of hit home. And then leaving that, I had no record. I've got no photographs of that time. I've got no photographic records of all that amazing identity. And in this book, I've got some pictures. I was looking on the internet and looking back at those pictures, and we all looked the same, didn't we? All the stupid haircuts, stupid ripped jeans, and all these funny clothes. So I wanted to document it because I realised as soon as I moved into a squat, I thought, wow, this is incredible. I've never lived in such a beautiful big house.
See, beautiful is a strange word.
Okay,
because the place that you were living in Hackney was described as murder mile and a den of iniquity and all of that. Yeah. And yet you saw beauty in it.
Yeah, I mean, it was described as ghettos and why people want to live here. But I've always had these weird glasses on, these rose-tinted glasses, where I've always seen the beauty. I'm a romantic in that way. I do find it incredibly hard going upstairs and seeing my show, and someone's made a film of the people on the buses. I can't even go in there. I can't see it. It's too. The pictures I make, I want to show the beautiful things. I show the life around me. I'm attracted to.
The pictures up there that in the exhibition are very different from the pictures that you kind of became famous for doing later, I suppose. They're much more chronicling and capturing. They're almost photojournalism of a kind, I guess. It's moving images, it's moments. And how did you make that transformation from that style of photography to the more considered approach that you adopted later, do you think?
I mean, that was a sort of process. One of it was frustration with the photographic medium itself.
Really?
I didn't think it was telling the audience what I wanted to say. When I was taking even the pictures, I made a 3D photographic model of the street I was squatting in to document that before.
Which is in the Museum of London, isn't it?
That's right. It's on permanent display there now. It documented, and then I found that's all it did. It didn't tell the story I wanted to say, I felt. Funny enough, now looking back on 20 years, I can actually see that the documentary pictures do tell the story. But then I thought there was an inadequacy in straight documentary photography. There's something missing and something lacking from it. So I was desperately searching to find something. And then I came across people like Jeff Wall, who were weaving a narrative and the political contents into their images, which I found really exciting. So I thought, actually, I've got to stage these pictures to tell the deeper layers and the deeper meanings that I really wanted to talk about. I felt very under threat as well, living in squats, becoming a traveller. I felt as though there was a barrage of images, mainstream images, in the national press, which were telling me that I was an outsider, wasn't part of society, and I should be seen as other, not quite proper, almost, like the gays were treated, like different subgroups have been treated within society. And I thought, well, I might be a bit of an outsider, I might be a weird, but I do consider myself to be part of society. And in that way, I'm a socialist. I want to contribute.
There's always been a political element of your work, hasn't there?
Yeah, that is very important for me. Yeah. And staging photography seems to be a way of bringing in the beauty of photography and the the accessibility of photography. Photography is an amazing medium that we all, even though some of us have never taken a photograph.
I've only ever taken one in my entire life. That's absolutely true. But
we all believe we understand photography. We all look at magazines, we all see newspapers, we all see the TV screen, we all see the internet, and we all have this connection with photography, our window into the real world. And that's what I do love about photography. It's the reality of it.
When you made the choice to come here and actually study it and do it properly, were you consciously thinking, I'm going to be a photographer? Was that?
Yeah, that was it. I made that conscious leap. I went off hitchhiking. I was 2 years as a tree surgeon in the Royal Parks, and then I went hitching around America for 6-7 months. And in that time I thought, I'm too old to swing around a tree with a chainsaw swinging around my neck. I'm going to cut off a limb. I don't want to do this anymore. I thought I'd become a writer. And I think I'll be writing amazing travel stories. I came back and I told my dad, and my dad said, you can't read and you can't write. What are you talking about? And I thought, oh yeah, you might have a point there.
Technical, yeah.
But he said, what about photography? That's more, isn't that more up your street? And I thought, oh yeah, you're right there. It is actually, that is a medium I can get my head round. So I did a A-level evening class, and then my tutor said, why don't you do a degree course? And I thought, I've got no qualifications, I can't do that. Luckily, in this enlightened country, as a mature student, you could get a grant. You didn't need qualifications. It was just, I was judged on my portfolio, and I got accepted. But it wasn't until I actually got into this institution where people like Anne Williams, who still works here now, and the tutors talking about, what does an image mean? What are you going to do with your images? Where do you place it within society? Can you change meaning? Can you represent people? Can it become propaganda? Can it undermine people? Can you abuse people? Can you exploit people? What are you talking about? I just want to take pictures and make money. That's where I came when I started here. But at that time, when I was 23, I think I started here. I'd been out of school for nearly 10 years. I left school at 15. I was desperately hungry for education. So, I was taking an apple to Anne's desk every day, and she would give me a book, a reading list. I don't know if students have ever heard of reading lists, but I actually read it. I was reading all these books.
It's interesting that you said that you first wanted to be a writer,
Yeah.
because it seems to me that there's always been an element of storytelling in your work.
Yeah.
And that's, in many ways, that's what you do. Almost not of fables and fairy tales, but that you are presenting stories, aren't you?
Yeah, that's very important for me. I do see the world as a narrative, and the stories around me. I see people's lives as being incredibly important, and photography is great for that. This picture here, it's a clip from A Midsummer Night's Dream. But for my Midsummer Night's Dream, I set it in an Afro-Caribbean community group in Hackney that goes to Notting Hill Carnival every year. So the fairies are actually the samba dancers. So I see these stories acting out around me, and the beauty of photography is that you get an insight into a fixed moment within a narrative, and then as a viewer, the wonder of it is that you can imagine what happened before and what happened afterwards, which I really love. So you give someone part of a story, but you had to work so much harder to build on that.
How important is your ability to get on with people? I mean, it seems to me that on the one hand, photography is a very technical business, and it's about the cameras and its light and its film and it's all of those things. But equally importantly is the ability to communicate with the people that you're photographing.
Yeah.
That seems to me to be one of the things that's very central to what you do.
Yeah, it's totally vital, I think. And that's something which you learn. I mean, students do find it really hard to go up to people and ask permission to take a picture. It's almost like going to the disco when you're 15, seeing
trying
a
to
lovely
pull a girl
or a boy, or whatever it is,
yeah.
Going across and saying, "Can I have this dance?" And you're terrified of that rejection. And it is like that when you start taking pictures. You're terrified of rejection. So lots of photographers get big lenses and try and put themselves further and further back from their subjects. And through time, I've built up this confidence. But I do love people. I am very much I do love to converse with people and relaxing with people, and it is that dialogue between someone, where the longer you spend with people, the more you get out of it, which is very important.
Is that why, do you think, at the beginning, and actually throughout your career, you photograph people who are your community, if you like, in various forms, whether that's the people who live on the same squats or the same council estates or in Hackney or, in the buses out in the fields, because you could develop a relationship with those people?
Yeah, that is definitely part of it. But at the same time, actually, it is nice to jump out of it now and again, which I don't do very often, because I do feel as though by staying in one place for so long, it's peeling the onion, isn't it? The more layers you peel,
the layers, don't you?
and it gets more and more and more and more interesting. Everyone says, "Oh, you must be bored of Hackney by now," But you get bored because how many was it? I can't remember. Was it 500,000 people live in Hackney, for example? So that's 500,000 stories that are living at the moment. Let alone their people their forefathers who've died before them, and the young ones just about to come out. So there's all these stories. So. It is great to be able to have, the time is great. When I first did my picture of the woman reading possession order, which went on to won the National Portrait Award in the National Portrait Gallery, I spent a whole day with my neighbour. She lived next door to me. And it was having the people around me, having that dialogue, and they realised, I wasn't taking the piss out of them. I was there on the same agenda. I was trying to represent her, myself, working together as a collaboration, trying to get a message across. So I was using it as a propaganda message.
I mean,
that day, or 2 days, or 3 days was very important.
That picture in particular, and many of the pictures I think from that era, seem to me to have real echoes to, I don't want to sound pretentious here, but to the paintings of Grand Masters. And I look at it and I see a Vermeer. Were you conscious of that?
Yeah, I mean they are actually direct references to Vermeer. That was
I didn't know that. I did well there.
So that's one of the things I think that works so well. When you see that picture, hopefully you just see it as a beautiful picture, and that's that first layer. When you see it, you think, oh, there's a beautiful girl, beautiful baby, and that's just a nice picture. And then it looks familiar somehow. It's we've got it in our DNA.
So how? I don't mean contrived in a negative sense.
Yeah.
But how set up is that? Talk us through the process of a picture like that.
Well, for that series, it was getting that connection with Vermeer. So for me, it was like feeling as though we were in a small village, a small town. Vermeer was in Delft. He was a political propaganda painter. He was fighting for the Republic of Holland, fighting for the liberation of Holland against the Republic of Spain. He was trying to represent the ordinary people of Holland, as in the only people representing fine art painting were the kings and queens and generals. So I put myself in his headspace in a way. So I said, right, we are the new kings and queens. We want to elevate our status. We want to have the status equal to other people around us in Hackney. We were being referenced as dirty squatters who shouldn't be living in this area. And I wanted to put ourselves on an equal footing to everyone else. So I was taking those postures, taking those settings that Vermeer used, echoing his pictures to use that status. So one of the first things was actually to buy the Vermeer book and just go around to neighbours' friends, have the cups of tea, watching the northern sunlight coming through at 11 o'clock and saying, oh, right, at 11 o'clock it comes through at that angle, which would be hitting that table. Look at this picture. There's something about the light that's coming through in that same sort of space. Which subject in Vermeer's painting do you resonate with in a way? So it would start with that conversation, and Philippa, the girl reading the possession order, she thought that was really interesting, that painting. She had a young baby. We talked about representing the bowl of fruit from Vermeer and changing it with the baby. So it was a big dialogue, and then it was moving things around, shifting things. Do we use tablecloths? Do we use dressing? Do we strip it right back to what photography is great at, as in it shows the reality of a real place, a real squat at a real time. So it's staged, but they are documents of a real squat, of a real person, facing eviction in real time.
Have you gone from a small camera to a big one yet by this stage?
Yeah, I had, yeah. So
was that a conscious decision?
Yeah, well, it was by accident. So it's in the an evolution of how you work. So, funny enough, the reason why I started shooting on the big camera was actually to make my model. So I made this 3D photographic model of the houses this high to document the houses before they were bulldozed. And I thought the great way to do that would be use these large format negatives, 5 inches by 4 inches negatives, put them inside the model and backlight them. There's nothing more beautiful than a 5:4 transparency on a light box. They are the most glorious, beautiful things that you can ever imagine. You look at your computers and your iPads, they're crap. Forget about all that. It's the transparencies on light boxes are amazing. It's like you imagine yourself being the peasant, walking across miles and miles and miles of the Somerset levels, wading through bogland, wading through the water, the floods, through the sewage, then getting to Wells Cathedral, going into there as the beams of light go through that stained glass windows. It's like, wow, the magic, you're transported to a different world. And that's what it's like when you get your transparencies back, these large transparencies, you put them on your light box and you see your mates in squats in Hackney. I was that peasant in that cathedral. And it was a transforming moment. So how do you take those transparencies and then you present them to people? You make prints, they're crap. Fuck, it's so frustrating. So for me, by placing them in a model and putting lights behind them, it got some of that magic into it. So, and then I thought, and then when you get hooked on that drug of real transparencies on real light box, then I thought, well, I've got to take the portraits for that. So then I started working in a completely different way. And then from rather than grabbing the pictures that you see upstairs, the ones that, afterwards you go and see the show upstairs, when I was running around my 35mm camera, grabbing pictures, not talking to the people, grabbing and running and taking. Suddenly I had to take this huge tripod, this huge, great big monorail camera, lug it around down the street, go into people's places, clunk it down, and then there's a whole different thing. You have to then have a dialogue with your subjects.
It makes everything slow down, doesn't it? Because it's a long process.
Yeah. And this college is good, but I was good at doing the theory, but I didn't learn the technical stuff very well here. I didn't go to those really good lighting workshops. So I missed out on those flash workshops, so I didn't have a clue. So my idea of dealing with bad lighting conditions, as in no lights really, was to use slow exposures. So if you look at all my early pictures, they're all sitting down. You know, they all have to, it's like Victorian clamps on your head. You have to stay still because people couldn't move because I'm using 1, 2, 4, 8, 10, 15, 30-second exposures. So people had to stay very still. So, and being a skint student, you had to say, please don't move because that will cost me £2, and that's like baked beans for a week. You know, that's your food money for a week. So you are governed by your materials and your techniques.
At some point, though, you went from being a skint student to being kind of recognised, and you know, people are buying your work, and it's going in museums, and you're winning awards and all of that sort of stuff. Did that process ever worry you that you might get distanced from what you were chronicling, if you like?
No, it's funny, yeah, it did. Yeah, I remember the first talk I did was in 1994, 20 years ago, at the Museum of London, you know, that theatre there. It's a big theatre.
Yeah.
We did a talk, I did a talk. My first proper talk to an audience, and I talked about the ghetto. They just acquired it for their collection. And I'm standing there with someone else, and I'm trying to talk to the audience, and I speak to... and I completely freeze up, my throat dries up, I can't speak, and it's absolutely terrifying. And it was a horrific ordeal, but I got through it. Everyone just felt so sorry for me that I did get through it. But one of the questions came up, well, you're selling your work now, you're obviously going to move to Hampstead, you're going to be off, you'll be jet setting around the world, you're supermodels. And I thought, oh yeah, Kate Moss, I'll be with her next week. And no, it's never happened. I've managed to move 50 yards in the last 23 years. I've moved out of a squat, but I've only moved to the next parallel street. And I'm still dealing with the same people in the same locations. You know, I'm working, as you know, on the Woodbury Down estate in Hackney with the people that lived on that estate for the whole years making that film. And I've got no interest really in that. I still feel incredibly attached to what's around me.
So how do you feel about the commercial world of photography? Do you feel very alien to it? Or?
No, I do occasionally do commercial work. I have done the Vogue photo shoot. So we went to Liverpool and I did that. And it was an amazing experience to work in a team where they do it professionally rather than being a cottage industry. The cottage industry is a wonderful thing because it's allowed me to spend as long as I want on a project, spend as much money as I want on it, and develop it in a natural, organic way. So when there's mistakes are being made, I can just discard them and move on, not show work. And that's been a wonderful way for me to slowly develop my work over the years. But then you're thrown into something like a Vogue shoot or a commercial job, and they say, right, it has to be done on that date. We're putting £70,000 to it. If you fuck up, we'll never work again, and you'll be out of the car. Oh, sorry, this has been filmed, isn't it? So you have to get it right there and then, and that has been a really good discipline for me. Occasionally, when I do these commercial jobs, I do find it really interesting to work with different people, work creatively, work with people who use hair and makeup, use different lights. So for me, I'm not part of a commercial world, but I have a commercial agent, and occasionally I do commercial jobs. So I do find it quite exhilarating. I couldn't cope with it full time, and never could be someone like Rankin, another graduate who's a year above me at college. And it's quite interesting the way he's gone full-on commercial photography, and he's made an incredible career out of it. And I've gone completely in a different way. And I'm glad that he's done it to his, and he wouldn't want it to do me. But
what about coming back here to be on the other end of the equation? I mean, you were a student here.
Yeah.
And you come back to teach here.
Yeah.
You're now Professor Tom Hunter.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Was that a daunting prospect to go back to your old school to teach?
Yeah, I remember going to my private view, and I saw Julian Rodriguez there, who was my tutor when I was here. And I said, Julian, you need me as your tutor. You need me back. And he said, yeah, you're right, we do. And that was great. I thought, okay, that's how you get a job. I've never been to an interview in my life. And, he talked to Paul Smith, who was my tutor in the first year. And Paul phoned me up, and I came down, and he said, yeah, great, we'd love to have you back. We got on well together. I thought, well, great. But But oh my God, for that week or 2 weeks or month before I started, the dreams I had about that, I was like, oh my God. And then coming into college after being away, because I've been away for 4 years, because I left, did a project on the road, been to the Royal College, graduated, did another project, got into the White Cube, and then came back as a part-time. But coming back was just all these ghosts, and then coming back, oh, this is horrible, you're going backwards, you're not going forward. It did feel really And did you feel horrible. Equipped as an educator? Did you feel you knew what you were doing when you started? That was actually really good in a way, because I didn't feel equipped. I didn't know what I was doing. So for me, when I panic, I think I'm at my best actually, is when I start to relax, then it all goes belly up. Belly up. It all goes belly up. Choose your body parts wisely. It all goes belly up. So for me, I was so desperate to make it work. I was uber keen. I don't remember having lunch breaks for the first 4 years of teaching. I was so manically trying to work out how to do it. But the tutors here were incredible. I was with an amazing team of people, and I still had that empathy with. I knew what it was like to do a dissertation as someone who's dyslexic, couldn't write and read very well, loved the visual language but struggled with a written language. I knew the pressures of trying to get a degree show up on the wall or in a space. I understood what it was like, struggling to live in London. And I'd only freshly been out of it. So I felt a great connection with the students. That was really exciting at the time. So that I did feel after, and Paul Smith, he's retired now, but he's always been like a dad to me when I was a student, and then he embraced me into the college. And there has always been that incredible camaraderie here. And do you feel... You've always seemed to me to have a little bit of the air of a preacher, a proselytizer about these things. Do you feel that you're passing on kind of your beliefs about photography and community and home and all of those things? Yeah. I hope not. I hope that I don't know. It's hard talking in front because my students are here as well, and I don't know what I've given them. I'm hoping that I can see the beauty in their work, and you don't impose your forms of beauty. Because I've gone quite. That's one of the reasons why I've got this show on now. Is that when they look at some of my work and they think, oh, Tom Andrew spends a year taking one picture, and he's so up his own. he's so precise and so clinical about his own work that he wouldn't understand any other practice. So it was really nice for me to be able to put the show on up here, where I've got 100 pictures. They're all snaps. They're printed on the cheapest paper you could possibly print on, and they're not thrown up. They're considered, but there is a beauty in that. And I love photography. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm teaching about photography. And I love the students' work. Every time I look on their websites or their Facebook, or when they bring in work to me, I love it, and I love seeing it. So I'm not saying too much about I am evangelical about my own work. I believe in the politics of what it does. I believe in trying to change society for the better. I believe photography has a powerful force within society. So I believe in that very strongly. But I think that, if someone wants to do fashion, why not? Why not just, have a superficial love of beautiful images? I accept that, and I love it.
That kind of preaching element, is that what led you into to making the movie, for example?
Yeah. Again, it's a part of what we talked about earlier, the narrative, telling people stories, getting those stories across, the stories that I feel as though I like to champion different people's narratives, especially the people who haven't normally get a chance to speak for themselves.
It's almost giving a voice to those who don't have one, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm working on that Finsbury Woodbury Down estate, up in Finsbury Park, on the border of Finsbury Park in Hackney. Working with the Olders group, the coffee morning that I went there for 3 years, and them telling me their life stories, and they'd be able to get the money out of the Serpentine to fund the film so they could tell their stories. And so I just became the facilitator for that. Was an amazing moment. I've had these amazing moments where I presented works to a wider audience, and I feel as though all I've been able to do is just tell someone else's story. That's just felt incredible to me.
Was it very different working in a different medium, like film, moving film rather than stills?
Very different, yeah. Going back to that cottage industry, I've got total control. So when I take, one picture, I know exactly what it's looked like. And if it isn't perfect, I don't show it. It's going to be only exactly what I show. I'll take it when the light's just right, when the place looks just right. I take complete control. The next one I think is that woman reading women possession order. And I've got lots and lots of different versions of this in files. I tried out lots of different things, but I only show exactly what I show. When you're working in the film, it's like working with the Vogue thing in a way. We have 3-4 days of shooting. We had a huge team. One day there was 120 people on the set.
Wow.
You can't say, I'm not quite in the mood today.
The light's not quite
right. No, I'm not inspired. Leave me. You can't say that. You can't play these.
Believe me, I've worked with directors who do.
Okay, yeah. Maybe I can't play my prima donna card quite right, but you have to get on with it. You have to make the most of it, and you have to work in a team. So, the artist directors, and you have to working with a DOP, the director of photography. You have to trust other people. I hate trusting other people. I am a control freak as well. I like having everything in my control. Taking this picture, it's just me and her there. I only take it when the day is right. So that was a real letting go, which was really hard.
Do you want to do it again? Is it whetted your appetite? Or?
It is. There's some things I love about it. I love working in a group and that camaraderie. And after, I didn't sleep when I did my, didn't sleep for a whole week. You're up every night thinking about, what about that detail, that detail? What about the food? What about there being enough tea on set? What about the transport? Would be parking? Would we be able to get into the flat? What about breaking down the door? What about, all these things are, just become totally manic. Which I love. I like being manic every now and again, as long as you're not manic all the time. That's great. The hard thing I find is I'm not very good at writing.
You've done pretty well in that, I think.
Yeah. Hopefully someone will read this. I did spend a lot of time writing an essay in this, so hopefully someone will read it. You have to write. The money to make films is basically means you've got to have either a full-time producer, or you've got to spend your whole time writing applications to get the funding, and that I find really, really frustrating. Whereas my own projects with photography, I can still be a one-man band. I can still do my own projects in my time, in my space, and fund it myself, and the returns can fund the next project. So that's much more organic in a way. But yeah, if there's any film producers here tonight who've got any good ideas, 150 grand would be lovely. I've got some really good ideas myself. So, yeah.
Talking of technology, and clearly digital technology has come very much to the fore in the period that you've been taking photographs. Do you feel that you're an old-fashioned photographer these days?
Yeah, I am a dinosaur. Yeah, I am. Who thought that? Yeah,
still kind of entranced by the
still
dark room.
I still get my 5:4 transparencies back. I still look at my light box. I'm still transfixed by these material objects. They still hold them up. I've still got boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of them around my house. I've got a proper archive, proper hard, real archive, which is lovely. I still love film. I think one of the important things, when I was at college, I used to go to shows at the Hayward, the Tate, all the different museums and galleries. We're so fortunate to be in London for these amazing shows. And what is it you like out there? And the main thing I realised is you've got to be somewhat different than everyone else. So in some ways, being a dinosaur now is actually playing into my hands, because everyone else now is using digital technology. And everyone, I'm being rude in some ways, but lots of photography becomes very similar. It's all
everyone's a photographer as well, aren't they?
Everyone's a photographer,
yeah.
But every photographic print has a very similar quality. So by printing from transparencies now, the objects that I make do resonate with the audience in a very different way. And it does sort of draw you in, I think, and you are saying, well, the colours feel a bit different. There is something slightly different about that. And what you're trying to do as an artist is trying to capture an audience so they don't just go, oh, I know what that is, I know what that is, walk past or flick through an iPad. There's something about it which doesn't quite feel right, and you stay just that little bit longer, and then there's a chance that they might read a backstory, chance they might read the politics, chance they might get involved in a narrative. So in some ways, by everyone else jumping on the digital bandwagon, being a dinosaur might help me out. That's what I'm hoping for, anyway.
When you embark on a new project, how does it begin for you? Is it an idea? Is it a moment? Is it an image, or what?
Yeah, it's everything, really. It's been alive, and it's been listening to the radio. It's going to the cinema. It's been down the pub having a pint with someone and hearing their story. It's cycling along and seeing a demolition of a synagogue or an old pub. There's dialogues are just coming at you all the time.
It's funny you used the word tribal very early on, and when you were discussing our youth, when, as you said, everyone was a punk or a mod or a skinhead or whatever it was. In some ways, it seems to me you've spent your photographic life capturing lost tribes almost.
Yeah.
Whether they're urban tribes or rural tribes or youth tribes or whatever, whether it's just the people who gather in that one youth centre or old people's home in Hackney or whatever it is. You seem to be a chronicler of lost tribes.
Yeah.
Is there a melancholy about your pictures, do you think?
Yeah. I try not to be so melancholic. I do love melancholia. There's something quite wonderful about sitting with a pint of Guinness and a whiskey in an old Irish pub, and we're so lucky the Elephant Castle's got the Prince of Wales down the road, which still is an old Irish pub. But I very rarely go in there by myself with a pint of whiskey and a Guinness. And think about the old days when you used to roll around on motorbikes, terrorising the local pubs. But there is something about photography. There is melancholia in photography where you're always harking back because always that moment has passed, which is quite wonderful. I try not to dwell on it too much, but yeah,
it is inherent in your work, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. There is always harking back to something, and these old stories I do love, and yeah, these old processes and the stories that people tell. I am fascinated by them, and don't get me in that pub with one whiskey or 2 pints, otherwise I will go. Do you remember the days?
Well, they're remembered in your pictures.
Yeah.
When you look back, you said you've got your archive. Do you look back very often?
Well, it's been an amazing year for me because I've produced three books over the last year and a half. So one of them was a big Hatsie Counts publication, a big sort of tabletop publication which chronicles my work. And then the book I made of the show, the Crowbar, which is about just that journey 20 years ago when I was in a double-decker bus. And then this small publication here. But to make all of these free, I've had to go back from my archive and I've had to dig out pictures I haven't looked at for ages. And it did get pretty hairy at times, I must admit, looking at pictures, especially of the double-decker bus journey, you know.
Because that's a lost world, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, and looking at these people, some of them, you know, you remember that fight you had with your ex-girlfriend when you got your new girlfriend and she lives on the bus and you got your new girlfriend just moving onto the bus and it's, oh my God, there's one picture of a girl looking at the camera, you'll probably work it out, and you can see the hatred in her eyes looking at me taking that picture. It's like, I felt physically sick when I brought that out for the first time. Obviously, there's moments when you see yourself looking slim and healthy, you think, I wasn't that bad once. But, so there's a bit of that going on there. But it's, yeah, the dreams get really messed up. And it is a weird, because you're taken right back when you haven't seen these pictures for 20, 25 years. And the photograph on the light box again, you are transported to that time. You remember what you're feeling at that time, what you're doing at that time, your love life, your emotional life, that old baggage gets regurgitated. It makes you feel sick. Happy, suicidal, it all comes up. It's an emotional roller coaster. So it's only now, probably today, that I'm actually feel slightly relieved about the whole process.
And do you feel slightly less nervous now, Tom? You were a wreck when I arrived here this evening.
Yeah, I mean, as I've said this many times before, having an exhibition is like, you know, standing up in front like today and just taking all your clothes off and say, here I am. You know. You've been working on something for a long period of time. You put all your energy into it, physical and mental energy. And you're thinking, this thing is really important. I want to tell people this and people to understand what I'm talking about. And then you present it, and then what do they say? That's stupid. What's it all about? So you're incredibly vulnerable putting old work up or new work up. So it is a really quite a strange business, you know, having the show at the National Gallery, 650,000 people saw that. There was lots of media attention. It was really, oh God, I didn't quite know how to deal with that. I ran away to Ireland for 6 months after that. Having the show at the Saatchi Gallery, that was really something else. I just, you know, I didn't know how. I got completely hammered that night to deal with it, and someone had to carry me and chuck me into a taxi to get me home. I just didn't know quite how to deal with that exposure and all these people going, oh, they're wonderful pictures. It is quite a strange business. As a photographer, you hide behind the camera. You don't want to be out there. You're presenting other people's stories. You're a storyteller, but you hide behind the veil, the curtain. But in an exhibition, that veil gets pulled back and you're exposed, and your belly looks a bit like a pot belly. Your legs are a bit cronky. You do look a bit weird up there, and it's a strange business.
Well, Professor Tom Hunter, we've exposed you a little so far this evening. And I think it's your turn. I've spoken to Tom for 3/4 of an hour. We've got 15 minutes left. And I'd like you to ask some of the questions. We have a microphone. So stick your hand up. Who's going to be first? Don't be shy. Who's going to take the first question? Come on. There you go. There's a gentleman there. A lady there. Sorry. It's definitely a lady.
Okay, this is a bit of a spontaneous question. I haven't really thought this through, Tom. But you talked about your childhood and leaving school at 15, and then the experience of coming into higher education at 23. I'm not in education, so this might be a bit controversial to ask, but what are your thoughts in terms of tuition fees and how that's going to actually impact on the dinosaurs of the future? Like, are we restricting the kinds of voices that are going to come through as creative practitioners? And I just wondered if you had any thoughts or observations about education today and maybe some of the strictures that teaching professionals are encountering today.
Yeah, there's so many parts to that. It's quite a tricky nut to crack in a way. It is definitely a sad thing that tuition fees have been imposed on this generation, and they have to face the debts. Funny enough, in some ways, it's it's easy for me to say it's terrible, but for the new generation, it isn't. And already it's a norm, which is quite strange. So I don't think that's affected in a way. So I still think we still get lots of students, and everyone feels it's a norm to go to university. And university is an incredibly liberating experience, to have that time out of commercial pressures and to be able to think and to be able to experiment, to be able to play, to be able to be out of your hometown, to be with a new generation of people where you think about the same subject and you're excited about the same sort of ideas, is a mind-boggling and mind-blowing opportunity. And it is brilliant that the previous government and this government want to open up to more people. But how can we afford it is a major problem. We've got...
Could you have done what you did without coming here for a full-time education?
No, I'd be a completely different person. I did a thing for Radio 3 and I did this talk and he said, your whole life is all about education. It's my life changed. You know, I was a working class oik with a chainsaw and education changed me to become a middle-class professor. I've become intelligent and I can sneer at the best of them now.
You're even better looking now.
I'm even better looking than I was before. All the tattoos have gone from my forehead and my knuckles. So I look respectable. I've even got a suit on, which is interesting. So it is, but I do worry, you know. It's having that debt when you leave college is a big burden. So the freedom that we were talking about in the pub before we got here, when we left in the 80s, it was a known fact that you would leave college, you would leave school, and you would go on the dole, and there was no future, as the Sex Pistols say, and your future dreams, your shopping scheme, you know. But that wasn't depressing.
No, it was actually very liberating.
It was quite liberating. We were actually, hey, I don't care, I won't do anything. I live in a squat, I just do what I want to do, I just make my own practice. Now, the whole culture has changed. So the culture is you've got to get a job, you've got to get a house. So the expectation is so much more higher. So it's almost impossible to say that's good and that's bad because culture changes. It's almost like saying to David Bailey, oh, you sexist pig. Yes, there was lots of sexist stuff around in the 60s, but to look back on it is actually to say everyone was wrong in that period. Well, yeah, they were wrong, but you can't
impose the morality of now, can you?
You can't go back into that time and look at it that way. So it is quite strange. Yes, if I was the new Minister for Education and you invoked me into the next government, I would stop these tuition fees if I could possibly help, and I think it would help. But I can't see us going backwards now. And yeah, it is problematic. Yeah.
Another question. Come on, otherwise I'm going to have to keep asking them. Lady here.
I was thinking about what you were saying about Tom's work, kind of, you know, being interested in these kind of tribes, and I see your work also as being kind of showing a lot of the changes that like Hackney and London are going through and the ways in which that's like, you know, there's a lot of social transformation in the city. And I was wondering if that's like an ongoing area that you'll continue to work on, seeing as it seems to be such a kind of salient topic at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. London is always changing. It's always gone through these amazing transitions. It's a beast that never stops growing, never stops devouring itself, expanding, contracting, devouring, eating, destroying, regenerating, which is why we love it so much. I think that's why we're all here in a way, because it sucks us in and we get caught up with it. I moved to London for, I say, 1 year I'll do London and then I'll be out. 27 years later I'm still here. Yes, that whole crazy mixture of high culture, low culture, popular culture, painting, working class, middle class, upper class, palaces, council estates, pubs, theatres, expensive restaurants, greasy spoon cafes, all, you know,
cheek by jowl,
fighting each other, you know, in a way, aren't they? It's that tension that we love. So hopefully I can keep on documenting it. You do run up against brick walls every now and again. You go, oh, why am I doing this? It's all wrong. And then you take a time out. And I think this period I've gone through at the moment, the last exhibition I had was on the standing stones of the West Countries. I've almost gone back to my roots. But I think you do need to step outside every now and again and reevaluate what you've done. And it sort of takes something like, you know, Robert to point out what I've done. So I realize, oh yeah, or yourself to realise what you've done so you can actually readdress it again and keep on working. So I'm not moving off to Berkshire because it's flooded.
Not this week, anyway.
Not this week. So I do want to, the place I love is Hackney. My kids are here. They're growing up here, so all that's going on now. So there's all that stuff going on.
Do you photograph your family?
I got a little digi snap, so I do that on for Facebook.
But not more kind of...
But I haven't really done it. I've just bought myself even more a dinosaur bit of kit, a 10-8 camera, so the really big negatives. So I've got loads of film that I bought 15 years ago. So I've just started to take pictures of my kids with that. So I really want to start to go really, really backwards. So pinhole technology, 10-8 negatives. Everyone else is zooming forward with their digital technology. I'm sliding back into the abyss of time. Yeah, I'll be back to... has anyone seen the Cruds? I watch all these kids' films now. The Cruds, the way they make films, take photographs of themselves, is they have some sort of trap going on, and they stand up, and the rock smashes against their faces and leaves an imprint. So I think... that's what I'm going to be doing next. So if anyone wants to come to my studio and have a big rock smashed against your face for an imprint, I think that could make a beautiful project in a nice West End gallery.
There was another hand raised behind you. Yeah.
Lovely shots, Tom. I wondered, you said you used to use long time exposures on your large format camera. Have you since then did you start using artificial light to stop that? And if you did it alter the way that the people reacted when you put artificial light in? Or have you always just stuck to sort of long exposures on your interior shots when people are involved?
Pretty much stick to that old technique of just using available light. In fact, the last series I did was of using a pinhole. I've done lots of pinhole stuff, so I'm using sometimes 3/4 of an hour exposures. Interiors of synagogue, churches, mosques around my local community. So really, really long exposures. But when I did the Vogue shoot, I borrowed, oh no, I shouldn't say, the bosses are here. I hired some lights from, some tungsten lights, and I've used some tungsten lights, and another friend gave me a couple of old tungsten lights. And for the Midsummer Night's Dream project I did with the Royal Shakespeare Company, I used those, but they're not powerful enough, so everyone else uses flashes. And using these old tungsten lights inside, I still have to use like 15-second exposure. So that's really interesting. You get these directional lights. Again, I'm using the wrong kit for the wrong film and the wrong cameras. And again, I think the pictures look a bit different than everyone else's. So again, by being not technically capable and not being very intelligent, I've actually done something which has something organic about it and a much more accessible feel to it, I think. So it can go in your favour.
I understand completely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gentleman next. You haven't got far to go with the microphone.
Thanks. Tom, with the Palace for Us, you were reflecting back on a housing estate and seemed to be on a social reform movement just after the Second World War about creating, homes for ordinary working people. Were you aware of the documentary films of that time, from the 40s and early 50s, around the social reform movement about housing?
Do you mean the government ones that they put out?
I mean, kind of Jill Craigie's film, The Way We Live, and Kay Mander's films.
I have seen
46 and 48.
Yeah, no, I haven't looked at them properly, actually. I've sort of seen some bits of them, and I've watched some of them, but I haven't looked at them in the proper research sort of type way, actually.
Could you say something? Could you say something about the research you did for that film? Because you were working with the people of the estate for quite a long while.
Yeah. Sorry, it's gone really cold, isn't it? The air conditioning's suddenly gone into -5 degrees. It's going up my trouser leg as Tom wearing. The main research for me was actually going to a coffee morning. So I spent 3 years with Age Concern making cups of teas for old ladies and old gentlemen on the estate. So every week I would go up there, and that was the main sort of part of my research, was to just hear what people had to say and becoming relaxed and building up a dialogue with these people. That was really important for me, because originally when I was employed, commissioned by the Serpentine Gallery, it's like, we want, your reconstructed photographs out there. But after spending 6 months of just chatting to them, I realised there was so much more to say about the people, about the history, about the estates, about that time in history when we did, after the Blitz, after the Second World War, we sort of rejected the old society and wanted to create a new society, a society of where we had a welfare state which looked after everyone, not just the elite, where we would have a national health system where people got ill, they were taken care of, where people became homeless, they had a place to live. The thing that we're almost dismantling now, or we're sort of questioning very much, why do we need it? Why do we need to look after poor people? So that was very important for me. And spending so much time really did open up these things. And again, what I talked about earlier, frustration in photography, can it do everything you want it to do? I didn't feel as though it could. And I really had to have these people's voices in. I mean, there are ways you can do that, with still images and dialogue. But for me, there was something about the movement, the way old people did describe dance, I thought was quite incredible. And I just wanted to see them dance again. So every time these people took me into this little back room I had and set up this digital DAT recorder to do these oral histories, they would describe their lives to me. I was closing my eyes and just imagine this 84-year-old girl as a 19-year-old going to the dance in Finsbury Town Hall and swirling round a dance floor with her husband-to-be. And it just conjured up so much imagery in my mind that I was completely lost in it, I suppose, transfixed in it. Yeah.
To be honest, we've got to 7:30, which is the time. I'll take one more question. See, I told you should have started at the beginning. You'd have got more in.
You said to you when you were younger that you wish you documented more of your life when you were in your early teens. Now people in their teens are taking so many pictures on iPhones and Facebook, and it's such a constant documented narrative of all of our lives.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's slightly ruining, taking care in the way people document their lives? That using instantaneous way of documenting your life possible. Do you think it's going to have a big effect on the way people see photography?
Yeah, the whole process becomes incredibly disposable, doesn't it? And unimportant. A friend of mine did die last year, who was my best friend at school. Went to his funeral. And so we are on Facebook. Even old people like me, we know how to use Facebook, some of us.
I don't.
No, you don't. You're but we were trying to find pictures of him, and there was one picture of him when the local fairground came to our village, and as a friend of a friend's dad took a picture of him, and he was a skinhead at the time, big Dr. Martens on, rolled up, the tie-dyed jeans, denim jacket, tattoo on the forehead, big smiling face with a cigarette out of it. And he looked, that image was just so powerful, and just talks about everything about his life at that time, where you've got 500 pictures from tonight. And how are you going to archive that? How are you going to keep it? Because every time you change your phone or change everything, it seems to be lost as well. So that's quite interesting. And will you know what to save? Because you can't save everything, obviously. So the whole archival, the whole process of archiving images is so complicated now. And when I took those pictures on the bus upstairs, I had so many films, I could afford to buy one picture, one roll a week or something like that, or whatever it was, and I counted each frame, So even though it seems very random, I am thinking, I'm not going to waste one, it's one frame off a roll of 36, and you can't afford to buy too many. And you don't think about it, so you're not trying to sum anything up, you're not trying to make it important, which is great, because you are much freer than we ever were. So you've got a freedom and a spontaneity. But to try and make sense of that is a problem, because it's taken me 20 years to make any sense of that. And I've had to work with Val Williams to make some sort of sense of it, who's been archiving and putting on shows for most of her life. I've been working with Ben Weaver from Here Press to make sense of the book. And even now, I still think, we should have put that one in. We've missed out some, or we've got too many in it. You know, it's an incredibly problematic thing to deal with archives, and it takes years and years and years to get your head around it. So, sorry. Yeah. What was it, the 10-year film, and it edits your whole life for you now, doesn't it? 10-year birthday of Facebook, edit out your whole life. So we don't need to worry about that. We don't need these editors and archives anymore. Facebook does it all for us. What a depressing thought to end on.
Well, I won't let us end on a depressing thought, because as I said, I've literally, genuinely, in my life, only ever taken one photograph. I took one picture of my mum when I was 9, and it wasn't very good, and I thought, I'm sod that, I'm not doing that again. And I haven't. But I don't need to, because we've got people who can do it very, very well indeed. And I think we've been listening to one tonight. Tom Hunter, well done.
Thank you.